lot of time talking about tropical terrariums and tropical plants. So today I thought we would do something a little bit different and build a tank for a Standings Day gecko. So these geckos actually come from the southwestern coast of Madagascar. They have a very tiny range. It's very hot, it's very dry. It's called the spiny forest. So we are going to build a dry, hot tank for these geckos. The Madagascar spiny forest is also home to lots of other really incredible creatures like lemurs, tortoises, very cool animals. There's chameleons that live in this hot, dry environment. Skinks, all sorts of critters have also adapted to living in these dry conditions. So today I'm going to set up a tank for an animal that, as we said, is found on baobabs. In the wild, I actually saw them most commonly on man-made structures. So they are finding shelter on things that people have built. There's a lot of open air structures, and you'll find them in the rafters and hanging out using those as shelter, which is pretty cool. So we're going to build something with a lot of climbing structures. They want to be up high, that's why it's a taller tank, so that they can really climb up here and have lots of spaces to hang out right underneath the lights. We're going to put some pretty bright lights on it, and it's going to be a pretty hot tank with a basking spot of about 110 degrees. Dropping to about 75 on the ground is what we're going to shoot for. That way they have a really wide range for thermoregulation. So when I'm setting up a tank, there's a couple things that I'm thinking about. One, I want it to mimic the environment where they come from, right? I want to create something, that they would find in the wild. Maybe not the ponytail palm. This plant actually comes from Mexico all the way to Central America. They are found in the states of Oaxaca and Veracruz. They come from a very dry environment. They want to stay dry. They want bright light. It's actually my first time attempting to use them in a terrarium this way, so we'll see how it goes. I'm excited to try. I think they're a pretty cool plant. So I want a tank that's going to mimic the environment, and I also want a tank that's safe to the animal. I don't want my gecko to jump on a rock and the rock falls, right? What if the other gecko's underneath it? So I want everything to be very sturdy. That's really important, especially with bigger animals. And I want it to look nice, right? I want to come in and be like, oh, that's an awesome tank, right? If I have to look at it every day, I want it to be beautiful. Now that I've made it up high enough to get into this tank, we are going to dive right in. I'm going to just kind of talk you through my process for building this tank. So one of the things with the ponytail palms is that they want a very tight base. They don't want a lot of soil. So I don't want to just plant it directly into this tank. I want to keep it contained. So I'm going to think about kind of where I want to put it. I'm going to hop in here and start adding things. I'm going to start with the biggest plants first, and I kind of went crazy with the plants. I'm going to put at least one ponytail palm in here. It's not actually a palm at all. This is in the agave family. Also, asparagus is also in the plant family that this is in. And the other big plant, I might put both in. We'll see what fits, because I got a really gigantic Sansevieria. Obviously, this whole plant is not going to fit in this tank, but Sansevieria is one of my favorite plants for day geckos in general, but for Standings Day Geckos, because Standings Day Geckos are going to get pretty big. This is an adult gecko that's about this size. It creates a good space for them to bask right up underneath the light. Sansevieria is a plant that wants to get dried out, which is exactly what we need for this arid enclosure. And it also can take all sorts of different brightnesses of light. They tend to do really well in standings enclosures. And we have a couple of different types growing already in our tank. This is a new one for me. I'm not actually sure what it is. It's like very, very yellow. At first I thought there was something wrong with the whole batch of them, and then I realized that it was just a weird color variation. But obviously this plant is not going to fit in there, so I'm going to have to unpot it and break it up into clumps. I did bring a big tub. This is like the messiest thing, is repotting plants. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to shake it out. Alright, so we can see the roots here. I'm doing pretty good. Actually looks very happy in this. It's not root bound or anything. I can see the new mega mess. The new baby popping up right there. I'll pull it out. We'll get a better look at it. Sansevieria produce little pups and grow new plants. So what I'm going to look for here are the different pups, essentially. And break it apart where it's where it's easy. So I'm gonna kind of digging around the roots because I don't want to damage the roots. I'm just gonna shake it a little bit, and it's possible these were all actually different plants that were all put into the same pot. This one was not actually attached to that one, so this is actually just a totally different plant. And I'm gonna take all its soil off because the soil does have fertilizers in it, and I don't want to bring anything into the tank. Take this off. Now we just have roots, and I will actually rinse this before I put it in. I'm gonna start to play with placement here. So I'm just gonna start to throw them in here for now, and we'll start with a couple of them. Okay, here we go. Now you can see the baby popping off. So, most of this was still underground in the dirt. And Sansevieria actually have a weird type of photosynthesis that can happen at night. So where most plants photosynthesize during the day, that's like a little note coming off here too, they can also photosynthesize at night, so also producing oxygen at night. Whereas a lot of plants apparently don't produce oxygen at night. All right, let's see. I think we'll grab a few more. Oh, we got a bigger baby here. This one's coming off. So we're starting to lose the whole thing off the table, so I'm gonna go ahead and just bring it down. Continue to just take them apart. Another reason I really like these for Phelsuma standingi is it is a really good laying spot. So they'll actually lay their eggs in the crick of the plant. Is that a word? In the crick. Okay, so do you see how it shot out and then it went straight up? It hit the side of the pot. So it was forced it to go up instead of outwards. Okay, so check this out. We have some Sansevieria with their pups. Check this one out. It curves up very nicely. Remember, part of this was still under the dirt. This one had a bit more out, but it goes out and then it very sharply goes straight up. So what happened is this was growing in the pot, it shot out its pup, it hit the side of the pot, and then it had to go straight up. So you can see the difference in growth there, which is kind of fun. I have separated 5 separate plants. Well, I'm still counting that one as part of its mom. I'm just gonna play with placement in here. I wanna think about where my heat lamp's gonna be, where my UV light's gonna be, and what plants can handle that. I'll probably have the heat lamp on this side, which is probably where I should stick the ponytail palm. Oh my god, what a mess. That's too many Sansevierias. Is this too many Sansevierias? Let's see here. I'm gonna pull 2 of them out. So okay, maybe 5 was too many. Let's stick them back in the pot for now. And think about the other big things going into my enclosure, which are gonna be wood, stuff for them to climb on. And I have a few different types of wood here. It's actually a dried jade plant, but one of the coolest looking things. This is some grapevine. And that actually does mildew in tropical terrariums, but for Standings Day Geckos and bearded dragons and stuff, this stuff works pretty good. I don't like it with crested geckos, gargoyle geckos as much. Then bamboo. They use the bamboo for laying their eggs and to hide. The babies love the bamboo and they'll spend all of their time just hanging out. So we got a bunch of different types of bamboo and also driftwood. So I am going to build the ponytail palm a little plant box. So I want it in this corner, so I'm going to pull everything back out, and I am going to bring in some rocks that I'm going to use to actually build a little wall. And the way that I'm going to stick these rocks together is using excavator sand. So we'll do that, we'll mix some of that up. Excavator sand is one of my favorite things to use in arid enclosures because you can really manipulate the environment. The downside is you have to, wait for it to dry. So we'll get this done today, and then we'll actually have to come back tomorrow to put the rest of it together because this part takes a day to dry. So I made like a really basic rock structure, and now I'm going to mix up some excavator sand, some water, and it's a clay-based substrate. So when you get it wet, it becomes kind of a clayy, liquidy thing. So, excavator sand. I'm going to just pour it into a container, and then I'm going to pour some water in, and then I'm going to start to mix it up. can see how it's really starting to get very wet. I might have actually put a little too much water in it. I added a bit more sand in here because it was a little bit too squishy. I like it pretty squishy, but then that was a little...
You do you?
Alright, so that's about as wet as... I just... Pour some in, mix and pour, mix and pour.
Who reads?
It's like making masa. You just put a little bit of this, a little bit of this, and mix it till it feels right. Like, you know?
I should probably just measure.
I've gotten this really, really wet here, and I am going to use it to kind of glue my rocks in place and build a little structure that will hold my ponytail palm. So I can take it out of its pot and put it in some of our substrate that we like to use for our animals here. This is how we're gonna do it. The two pieces pretty firmly, well, I mean, it's not firm till it dries, but they're puttied in there pretty well. Alright, so I have my two biggest rocks firmly embedded in the excavator sand here. Now I'm gonna just really pour it into the crevices that are left, and then I'm gonna fill the crevices with more rocks. So I'm really creating a rock wall here. And I'm making some rocks a little bit bigger than others, kind of to give it a little effect of a wall. So I'm just gonna really keep squishing rocks in here. And it's okay if it's messy right now. At the end, just when you go and you can clean it up, it just wipes right off when it's dry with like a little wet paper towel. So at the end, we'll clean it up. So you can see I'm really just adding a lot of it, and you see how wet why I wanted it so wet, so I can really stack them up. Building terrariums is one of my favorite parts of reptile keeping. I love creating little tiny habitats. And I also think that if you have an animal in captivity, it's your, you know, it's your responsibility if you have that animal to give it the best possible life that you can give it. I didn't make quite enough, so I'm making a little bit more. So you can see I squeeze it, and it's now running through my fingers. It actually stays pretty well together. So my other one was a little bit wetter because I really wanted those rocks to just kind of sink into it. So this one's a little bit thicker because I'm starting to work up at the top where the rocks are smaller, and I need them to really stay in there. I'm just gonna continue to build this little rock wall by adding this denser clay, and you know, it's covering the other rocks, and we can fix that. I really want them to be as wedged in that clay as possible. But once it's dry, we'll do a test. You know, we'll poke it, we'll touch it, we'll see how it goes. If it falls easily, you know, it comes down, and we can rework it. That's the nice thing about this stuff. You just get it wet and you can like change it. It's not a big deal if it dries. It's not like watercolor painting. I don't have the patience for watercolor painting. This is forgiving. Actually fits surprisingly well right there, but let's pack it so that it stays. It's probably as tall as I'm getting on that side. I'm gonna just add a couple in for stability in the front, because the more stable we can make it, the better for the animals, the plants. You can see I'm really packing it in, because afterwards I'll go through and I'll clean up. I feel like this wall is almost tall enough. That's about everything I want to put into the rock wall for now. This is going to be basically the pot for our ponytail palm. So I'm going to kind of just pull out the extra wet stuff now. Make sure that everything's kind of filled in nicely so that when it dries it's attached. And like I said before, it's okay if it's messy, we'll clean it up when it's dry. I'm adding in some smaller rocks to add texture in between the bigger rocks. Now that the rock wall is done, I have to kind of leave it alone because it's still wet, and if I hit it, stuff can fall. So we're gonna just let it sit overnight, come back tomorrow, and finish building this tank. And we've given our wall a few days to dry, so now we're going to kind of poke at it and see how well it is held together. So we really kind of used that clay as cement. So I'm just testing everything out. I'm going to knock off all the extra pieces of excavator sand that have dried, and a little top part came off here, but so far everything seems to be pretty sturdy, which is what we were hoping for. We wanted everything to stick. Looks like I lost one rock over here, so I'll just pull that one out. But everything else seems to be pretty well attached here. I'm going to go ahead and plant in here. And because I don't want this palm that's not actually a palm, to sit in wet soil, I'm actually going to put a drainage layer inside of here so that in case this does get a little too much water, the water goes down below where the roots are going to be. I'm going to start with that. What am I going to use as a drainage layer here? I have some clay pellets, expanded clay pellets that I use in all of my bioactive enclosures. So I'm just going to add a small layer here, just a little bit of drainage. I'm not going to put moss or anything on it. I don't want to trap any water. I just want the water to be able to really drain down if it needs to. And I also brought in a succulent mix for this palm. You know, it's easy for the water to kind of go through and not accumulate itself. But we're not going to be spraying this tank so heavily that should really happen. Since this is a drier climate tank, it does get sprayed twice a day, but because we keep the tank so hot, the water doesn't really cool or anything in this cage. It's really going to go through it. So you can see I didn't fill it all the way up. We've got a drainage layer, and this is our succulent mix here. It's got some very healthy roots, and it does have fertilizers in it, so we're going to go ahead and kind of shake out the soil and get rid of this soil. We're not going to use this soil in our enclosure. So I'm going to just go ahead and unroot this. So I am getting rid of all the soil that it came with, because these plants have fertilizers. You can see the little green balls, and I don't want the fertilizer in the tank. So we're really going to clean it all out here, and then I'm going to go hose the roots off, just in case I missed anybody, and give the roots some fresh water real quick. And then we'll go ahead and put this into the ground. So I am going to run outside and just hose this off. I am back with my wet ponytail palm, and I'm not going to set it fully in yet. What I'm going to do is grab my soil, I'm going to put it where I want it, and I'm just going to start to fill the dirt in around so the roots don't get totally squished by the weight of this trunk that it has. Pretty heavy trunk. So I'm just kind of filling in the dirt around it. Oh, we lost a rock. That is probably as deep as I'm going to make the soil, just because I'm a little concerned about this plant having too much dirt and not being able to really get comfy. So I'm going to leave it just like that for now. And this is where our ponytail palm is going to live. Now I'm going to start to think about the rest of the enclosure. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a base layer of our soil mix that we use for pretty much everything here, and then I'm going to start to add in the cage furniture, stuff for them to climb on, and then we'll kind of tuck the plants in between the cage furniture as we go. So I'm going to go ahead and go grab that soil mix. Now that I have the soil mix, I'm going to go ahead and just add a layer into the bottom of my tank here. I'm not going to put a whole lot in because I'm going to add the plants in and then put soil above the roots like I did with the ponytail palm. So I'm just going to put enough down so that there is something underneath the plants when I do start to stick them in. And this is actually not looking quite sandy enough for me, so I'm going to go grab just a cup of sand to mix into this. We're gonna add in some sand here. Just mix it in. Taking a little bit more sandy of a substrate, which is definitely what we're going for here. So you can see that our substrate is a lot more sandy now, which is good. And I'm kind of just cleaning it off the walls here, making sure everything is sturdy on the walls. And before I start to put anything else in, I'm going to leave this part pretty shallow. I'm not really going to put plants here, but I am going to add some more rocks in that area to pull together the landscape a little bit more. Now we'll start to add our cage furniture. I'm going to go ahead and start adding our cage furniture in. We have a handful of different types of wood that we use. This is a dried jade plant, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to start with the biggest ones that I for sure want to include, kind of figure out where they're going to fit into here, and then start to add some of the smaller things in around it. But I really am starting off with the biggest pieces, and I want them to be solid. You know, I don't want my gecko to jump on it and it to fall. I want it to be sturdy, so I'm making sure that when I add things in, they're very wedged in there. I actually do have a live jade plant with me today. This is the skeleton of an old one. Plant skeleton. So we might add some live jade in here too today. We'll see how it goes. The other thing I do want to add in here are kind of large pieces of bamboo. These we need for egg laying places. Standings Day Geckos and a lot of day geckos, the ones that don't glue their eggs to things, lay them in crevices. So bamboo is a good one. The Sansevieria is another good egg laying thing you can put in there. So we'll figure out kind of where this one's gonna fit. And this is the part that takes me the longest, is figuring out how to place everything. Because I'm also thinking about where am I going to put the heat lamp, right? Because I want to create a good basking spot where the geckos can sit right up underneath the heat lamp and warm their bodies. Also, where are the egg laying places under the heat lamp or on the other side? Let's see what else. I might be able to fit one more. I might have to dig for some smaller pieces. So, see, I'm pushing it around. I'm seeing what's happening because, you know, my geckos aren't that small. They're going to be jumping around. And I want to make sure that if they jump on it, these things are going to come flying down on them. So I'm really figuring out how sturdy things are. It might not be sufficient to hold up this. I might do a little bit of rearranging. That is the reality of building terrariums. It's a lot of rearranging till it fits right, till it looks pretty. You know, and then I'm thinking about what side is the side I'm going to be looking at. You know, what side's facing me, what side's facing, you know, the wall. And I want to make sure that the side that I'm looking at is the pretty side. That's another thing I'm thinking about when I'm setting these up. Also, how easily can I access the eggs? With standingi, it's not really a big deal because they're one of the few geckos that you can actually leave the eggs in the enclosure with the adults. And the eggs will hatch, and you'll have little baby geckos in with the adults. And they're a big, happy family. Most geckos aren't like that. It's pretty cool that they can do that. So we don't pull the eggs out. We actually let them incubate inside the cage. Alright, I think they have finally found their place. I'm definitely going to go with the giant bamboo. This is also a good one. It's totally hollow and it has a little hole so she can spy. Day geckos are pretty shy. Standingi are among the more bold day geckos. They're curious. They want to know what's going on. They want to watch. They're paying attention to what you're doing around them. So now that I have most of the structure in here, I'm going to go ahead and start to add the rest of the plants. So those snake plants that we took apart yesterday, those are right here. So we're going to go ahead and pull some of these out and start to add them to the enclosure. So we probably won't be able to fit that many in there. And it's nice because the wood is actually providing support for them, which will help them survive the massive geckos that are also going in here with them. Go Go ahead and cover up the roots with more of the soil mix, sand like before. So I'm just kind of mixing it up, and then I'm throwing it to cover the roots. It's looking very full already, and there are still things I want to add. So I'm going to stop at 3 Sansevieria, I guess 4 if you count the baby Sansevieria. I'm going to add some more plants in. So I've added some pretty big plants into here, and I've got a lot of other little plants that I'm going to add. So I've got a few different types of succulents here. I'm playing with the idea of sticking in, as well as the jade plant, and then some air plants. Air plants are epiphytes, so they're going to be getting the water from me misting down. I don't have to soak the whole environment, so they actually do all right in these hot arid tanks. That's adorable. We're going to start to add in more of the hardscape. We've got basic plants in that we're going to get onto the ground. So I'm going to start adding some more rocks to really tie the tank together a little bit more. We've got that rock wall in the back, so I'm going to continue the rocks throughout the tank in one way or another, just to tie it all together and make it look pretty. I'm gonna start to clean the glass a little bit to get rid of the mess that I made with the excavator sand. Literally spraying a paper towel with some water, just wiping down on the glass where the excavator sand came up too high. That's all I'm doing in here is I'm just cleaning where the excavator sand made my glass dirty so that we can see into the tank. Do you need more stretching in your life? Be sure to clean the glass after setting up the enclosure, so you have to stretch awkwardly around every plant. Okay. Feeling pretty good about this. I want to add one more stick. Just for funsies. More climbing structures they have, the better, especially when you have a whole family unit living in there. And then one of my favorite plants for Phelsuma standingi are actually these air plants, Tillandsia xerographica. The geckos actually like to lay their eggs inside of the plant, which is pretty cool. So smaller, this is the same thing. This is another xerographica, just younger, so smaller. I'm gonna find somewhere to wedge it. You could stick it in with some hot glue to attach it a little better. Other Tillandsias. How cool is this one? So this is it. This is our arid setup for a pair of Standings Day Geckos. We're gonna go ahead and move this tank to where it's gonna live and add our geckos in so you can see how they run really fast and hide the second you put them in here. Once they've been out in the light, in their heat lamp for a little bit, they'll start to pop back out. They are a really fun species to work with.
Alright, so this is our adult male Standings Day Gecko. You can see it. So this is our female. You can see her calcium patches. That's what the cheeks are. That's where she stores her calcium. She's lightly moving her tail. She's trying to distract me, the predator, from her head to go for her tail instead, because she can drop her tail as a defense and then run away. But obviously she can't drop her head and run away. So she's moving her tail.